This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Ding, 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 ding. Bruce Wolf and Sean Thompson in for Dan and Amy. And I should just quickly mention, apparently Bernie is trying to kowtow to the black audience. He's like into slavery reparations right now. Everybody should have at least
for you,
two,
and a check for you. He's doing an Oprah?
No, at least 3 houses like I, the socialist, have, and we should all honeymoon. Is that a pretty good Larry
He's not
David,
a socialist. He's a communist sympathizer.
Oh, there we
the
go.
fact that he isn't
traveler.
he really is.
Hey, Salena Zito.
Love her.
Prolific. She, of course, writes for the Washington Examiner, the New York Post, CNN contributor, author of The Great Revolt, Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics. Salena Zito, thanks
and
for joining us.
she's Italian.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
So, there's so many topics. What is the view out there, from the Beltway about us in Chicago? I just heard that, and I'll go with it, it's a rumor, but it was one of our producers said this.
Your whole career is built on a rumor.
Fox does not want to shoot. They had plans to shoot a couple of new series in Chicago, but they don't want any problems shooting in Chicago because of the Jussie Smollett situation. Are we the laughingstock of the United States of America?
Well, I don't live in Washington.
Right, but you write for the Washington Examiner. Okay.
Right, but I live in Pittsburgh, so I think I actually have a better perspective. I think, because I can see both worlds, right? And Pittsburgh is essentially the Midwest, and Chicago is like the crown jewel of the Midwest. And Washington, I fear that fellow reporters who live in Washington and or D.C. or New York really struggle with how to write or view or talk about the Midwest. So their perception about Chicago is not the same that someone like, say, from Pittsburgh has.
All right.
But having said all that, I think I'd be hard pressed to find any Chicagoan who would say anything different. There's always been chaos among the elected officials. And so I think they're worried more possibly about the chaos within the government as opposed to with the people. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, I was just talking with specific regard to this whole Jussie Smollett. I mean, it made sense.
Right,
but this
and how it
Jussie
was
Smollett
handled.
thing, because now it's very interesting. We got Mayor-elect Lori Lightfoot, who is, you must always have it with the epithet, openly gay, African-American, and she's a former prosecutor. She's going up against the African-American female state's attorney. So, you know how somebody once said that it took Nixon to go to China. He was the only one who could do it. It's going to take Lori Lightfoot to eliminate the scourge that is Kim Foxx.
Sure it is.
Right, exactly. And so I think that the concern maybe coming out of Fox is that, the chaos within the elected officials is too much for them. They don't see an end game to that. They think that it's always going to be that way. And I think you're right. I think your mayor-elect may be the only person who would be able to sort of wash away that outsider attitude about Chicago.
Salena, I want to broaden the conversation a little bit. To me, Illinois and Chicago in particular is already, at best, a urinal cake. I think it's over with. It's done with. I want to talk more about the nationally thing, which I think you were one of the few people, if not the only, who completely understood what was happening in 2016 and called it accurately. And here's my concern. I am rejecting the fundamental basis of Trumponomics. However, I am well aware that Bernie Sanders and the fellow travelers that are running as the Democrat nominee are absolute and total socialists, so much so they are even comfortable with describing themselves in the same way the North Koreans do, right? They're democratic socialists. So my question to you is, do you think the old Democrats, those baby boomers who just through legacy voted Democrat because their moms and dads did from World War II, will recognize the fact that the Democrat Party is the new red party of America and support Trump, or do you think we're just going to all be Illinois? What do you think?
No, they're not going to support socialism. And you saw it. You saw hints of a very left attitude coming, not really from Hillary Clinton, but the people around her in 2016. People understood that. Working class Democrats, suburban Democrats, and they voted for Trump, whether they liked his comportment or not. But look, when I just interviewed Mayor Pete last week, and while he on tone he's great, but Medicare for all, which is essentially Medicaid for everyone, right? Just Medicare sounds nicer, and he also said about he was going to, you can't take increasing taxes off the table and supporting third trimester abortions and not and only wanting solar and wind when the energy jobs in the area that I live are booming for working class voters. You're not going to win the suburbs on taxes and on Medicaid for all. You're just not. They may have taken a pause in 2018 and went over to Democrats, but that's because they ran moderate Democrats in congressional districts like the one I live in with Connor Lamb. But, he supports the shale industry. He's not supporting third trimester abortions. And so running candidates like that is not going to win over, and he doesn't support, higher taxes. You're not going to win over the suburban voters who took a pause, and you're not going to win back the working class Democrats who like their well-paying jobs. I mean, it's like the boom of the steel industry right now was in the 70s. Here with shale.
I pray,
and so
I pray you're right, Salena. I really do. I pray. I need you to be right. But what frightens me, to be quite honest with you, is we just saw the exact opposite. We have a Green Deal socialist fraud who's made a fortune off of it by Sean Casten, who won as a congressional race. We have Underwood, who didn't even live here, a pretend nurse, who all she did is preach the very utopian statism that these socialists are spraying. And she won all those suburbs, all those housewives, some of the
She lives with her parents. I wouldn't elect my children.
So that's my fear, Salena. I'm worried my fellow citizen is a socialist without knowing it. That's my fear.
Well, we always flirt with the left and or right wings of our parties. But usually it's a flirtation. We don't end up marrying them. And they become a pause. But, people don't pay attention to politics like we do.
Right. Salena, let me. We don't have that much
time.
And
it's like, oh, that person looks nice.
Salena, speaking of flirtation,
yes.
If Joe Biden Eskimo kissed you, would you be insulted by that, or would you say, let us embrace? What would you? I would like just to know from your perspective. Just a personal thing here. If Joe Biden did that.
Well, I had a candidate do that to me. His name was Joe Sestak. He was running for Senate. And I said, hey, don't do that. That's uncool. And that was it. And
come on, Salena, you're Italian from Pittsburgh. Knock somebody out, for God's sake. It's with all the gentle nature here. Come on.
Don't you think, Salena, that it's, they say it's not sexual, and we could argue back and forth on, what's sexual and what's a power trip. I think it's that, first of all, they live in this bubble, these politicians, and it's just the paternalism of a guy like Joe Biden. I mean, he's been in government forever, so he thinks that he is God's gift to the room. I think Rich Lowry made that point about, egomania. But it's like you're getting the laying of hands by the Savior upon him. You should genuflect to Joe Biden, this.
See,
that's what really sticks in my craw. It's like, who the hell are you?
In his head,
you
he's
freaking
Roger.
little guy who's filched off the government for your entire life.
In his head, he's Roger from Mad Men because he has circus mirrors in his house. He doesn't
Exactly.
understand how we see him. So I believe it's a character flaw, like everyone else in Washington.
But he still thinks it's 1963 if it's a Mad Men.
Schumer thinks he looks
Salena.
smart. Go ahead.
Well, I suspect that former Vice President Joe Biden, this is what he's always done. That doesn't make it right, but it's part of sort of his persona. And I've met people that are not in politics who also think, this is okay. And it's more, as a woman, to me, it's more of an invasion of personal space. It's like that Seinfeld episode of the Close Talker.
Sure.
It's just like, understand there's like an arm's length space that you just don't get into around a person, and that's that. And there are just people who just think like they need to be really close to you, and I don't get that. I don't want to be close to anyone. What if they had a garlic sandwich for breakfast?
Isn't it great that he was the point man, though, for the Obama administration's attack on the campuses, where due process got thrown out the window whenever any guy was accused of anything by a woman. And Biden was uttering these liberal shibboleths regarding you got to believe the woman all the time. But except when it comes to him, because that's the classic liberal hypocrisy, is that I'm exempt from all the rules that I create for everybody else.
Oh, politics is a basket of ironies. I mean, it really is. It is always do what I say, don't do what I'm doing, even if I'm doing it right in front of you. I mean, there's probably literally thousands of photos that will come across. You look at them about Biden, and you're just awkward about it. At this moment, because he hasn't run, despite the fact that he's taking a lot of hits, he's probably the only one that could challenge Trump in the areas where Trump was able to pull off the presidency, and that's Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Iowa.
All right, here's the thing, and I think this is what's going to happen in the debates. Mark my words. You heard it here first, Salena. Okay, I'm just a little Midwestern substitute host. Here's what's going to happen. Biden is going to nail Trump. Donald, wouldn't even call him Mr. President. You lied here, all the lies. And all Trump has to say is, that you lied when your wife tragically died. Your wife tragically died when you were 29 years old. Your wife and daughter died in an automobile accident, which was not the other guy's fault, and he was certainly not drunk. But you ran with the story that the other guy was, and that was political opportunism. I mean, how dare you do that? That's the biggest lie of all. And I think if that comes out and the public gets a whiff of that, I think that sinks him more than the sexual stuff.
Put the other co-host down for 100 on the under. I don't think any of that's going to happen, but go ahead.
Well, here's what I think. I think in a general, Biden is Trump's biggest challenge. I don't think that inappropriate space invader is going to disqualify Biden in a primary, but I do think that he's not left enough for these primary voters and won't get through a primary.
There you go. Salena, thanks so much. Washington Examiner reporter, but not from Washington. Pittsburgh. New York Post columnist, but not from New York. Pittsburgh. CNN contributor and author of The Great Revolt Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics. So you're going to be for Pittsburgh today against the Cubs, who can't win on the road. They got to win today at home. Sorry, Salena. Thank you so much.
Well, wait, we had a sweep.
Oh,
we're hot.
All right.
We had a sweep.
An aristocrat, huh?
Thanks so much, Salena, for joining us. AM 560, The Answer. Bruce and Sean in for Dan and Amy.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com.